I was gutted.
Okay, quickly, 45 seconds.
Well, I'll squeeze it in. I think it's a bit like deja vu, and a bit like one of your previous texters or callers said. This is smelling a bit like Cummins, I'm afraid. And I've got to say, if I'm looking down that, I suppose, nasal gaving politically, looking in my crystal ball, I think the first person to go is Morgan McSweeney, and then a year from now, it's definitely going to be Keir Starmer's days are numbered, I'm afraid to say it. I think it's the beginning of the end, and I hate to say that, but it's no longer the honeymoon period, is it? They've been in power for 18 months, and I just think this is too little too late. He can't apologise. He should have apologised there and then. And if it was the other way round, they'd be calling for an inquiry.
OK, well, I don't think there was a honeymoon period. That is very true. Tony Blair had a bit of a honeymoon period, but then that was blown apart by the Bernie Ecclestone scandal, wasn't it? Billy, thank you very much indeed. On Cross Question in the next hour, we have former Labour Minister and MP Caroline Flint, Ben Habib, leader of Advance UK, Ella Whelan, columnist for the Daily Telegraph and organiser of the Battle of Ideas Festival, and Bethany Dawson, making her debut reporter for Politico UK's London Playbook, something that all of us read every single morning and afternoon, it has to be said. So they're here to answer your questions on 0345 6060 973. And remember, you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Conservative leaders told LBC the Prime Minister or his Chief of Staff should lose their job over Peter Mandelson's appointment. Sir Keir Starmer's apologised for falling for Mandelson's claims about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein before he was made US ambassador. Kemi Badenoch says he needs to take responsibility.
Whoever it was who saw the security vetting and still decided that Peter Mandelson should be appointed should lose their job, whether it was Keir Starmer or Morgan McSweeney.
Peter Mandelson has denied any wrongdoing. A 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a teacher was attacked at a school in Pembrokeshire. Milford Haven Comprehensive was put into lockdown for a while earlier. Police have named a university student who died after being stabbed near to campus in Leicester. Khalid Oladipo died after being attacked near to De Montfort University. Ukraine and Russia have agreed to swap prisoners and civilians following trilateral talks with the US in Abu Dhabi. More discussions on ending the war will take place in the coming weeks. And interest rates have been held at 3.75% following the first rise in inflation in 5 months. The Bank of England's signalled that cuts could come later this year as inflation falls. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 93 points at 10,309. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.14. LBC weather, spells of rain continuing to move across the UK tonight, lows of -1. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
Taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk of a longer and more severe illness. Always take your doctor's advice. Search NHS antibiotics.
You saw me, walking along the beach. You watched me turn round the headland, and the tide, it cut me off. The rocks were wet, too wet to climb, so I panicked. But you didn't. You dialed 999 and asked for the Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
And I just want to say, whoever you are, thank you.
In an emergency at the coast, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard.
I'm a real snack monster. But Mum and Dad says all that munching isn't good for me. Around half the sugar we eat comes from unhealthy snacks and sugary drinks. If you want to change from a snack monster to a snack star, search Change for Life for loads of healthy snacking ideas.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. 3 minutes past 8 on LBC. Welcome to Thursday's Cross Question. On the panel, to my left, Ben Habib, leader of Advance UK, former deputy leader of Reform. Next to him, making her debut on the show, Bethany Dawson, a reporter for Politico London Playbook. To my right, Ella Whelan, columnist for the Daily Telegraph and organiser of the Battle of Ideas Festival. And to her right, Caroline Flynn, former Labour MP and Minister. So they're here to answer your questions. The number to call if you'd like to put a question to the panel channel 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp your question on that number too. Text 84850, and of course watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross question. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app. This is LBC.
Let's go to our first question. It's from Robbie in Chelmsford. Hello, Robbie.
Good evening, all. My question is, do you believe that Mandelson's misdemeanours will bring down Keir Starmer's premiership in the same way that Chris Pincher did to Boris Johnson?
I don't think it would be in exactly the same way, but I know what you mean. Ben Habib.
Well, there's an air about Starmer now, which did dog Johnson to the towards the end of his premiership, where he simply couldn't put a foot right, and you knew he was politically fatally wounded. And Starmer now has that air. He's a sort of dead man walking, and the question is, how long will he last, and who comes next?
And I suppose part of the question is, does he realise his own situation? I mean, does he realise, A, how unpopular he is, not just with the general public, but particularly with his own parliamentary party? Because any responsible political leader, if they think, well, I'm a drag on my party's vote and therefore it can't win the next election, then they ought to stand down of their own volition.
But who's going to replace him? There's no obvious choice. None of them, well, forgive me for saying so, or perhaps not forgive me for saying so, none of them look competent. I mean, they're all pretty incompetent lot. They said they were going to bring back adult politics. The adults are back, and the chaos of 14 years of Tory government's over. But this lot are every bit as chaotic, if not more.
Bethany, let's come to you. You've been covering this almost 24/7, I imagine, for the last few days. What do you say to Ben's point about, well, who else would there be?
Well, this is a good question, and if it is this scandal that was to bring down the government, the replacement to Starmer would have to be someone with no real relationship with Mandelson, and by virtue of the fact that Mandelson, up until a few days ago, was a Labour grandee, that person is quite hard to find with the skill set and with the experience to become Prime Minister. In terms of the comparison with this to Pincher, a Labour MP texted me yesterday and said, this isn't quite a Chris Pincher moment, but we definitely wouldn't want many more of these moments, which I thought was quite funny. Because they're
but they might get
lightly.
Another one with the by-election that's coming up.
Well, so this is the point that is so difficult for the Starmer government. There keeps being these headache moments, these real maybe headache, maybe bang your head against a wall moments, where it is just so difficult. There is another crisis to manage, whether that is just a part of being in government, whether that is a part of running the country, or whether that's mistakes that have been made, I guess is depending on your political viewpoint. But it doesn't look like it's going to be getting any easier.
Caroline Flint, you've been a government minister. I mean, does this sort of ring bells with you, where sort of a government goes from one crisis to another, but that's kind of what we pay ministers to do, to cope with those crises?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in answer to Robbie's question, I think this is a moment of jeopardy here, because we've seen just this past week, and we've seen it in previous weeks, how the whole issue around Epstein, obviously, it's not just Mandelson. The public are very much engaged because we've got royalty involved, corruption, lies, money, sex, everything. And it's got all those ingredients to run and run and run. And we've not had the end of it yet. And what it does is, as we've seen this week, it just blocks out everything else that a government wants to talk about, whether it's the National Cancer Plan, whether it's the announcement today about more money for some of our towns, even his report back to Parliament coming back from China and Japan. So I think we're at a moment of jeopardy here. I don't think the Parliamentary Labour Party probably got the appetite to move before the elections that are coming up later this year. But I think afterwards, and obviously we've got to wait for the outcome of those elections as well, this is something which will potentially come back. So how Starmer acts and behaves and the decisions he makes over the next few months are going to be critical to his future.
And you've got a lot of friends in Parliament. What are they saying to you? I don't need you to name them, but I mean, I'm sure your phone has been red hot.
Well, I wouldn't say that, so I'm not going to overplay it, but I think the people I've spoken to, certainly with the stuff that's come out around what Peter Mandelson was doing during the financial crash, I mean, I think the people I spoke were just absolutely astounded by that. I mean, lots of people I know don't think that, Peter Mandelson is a choir boy. They all know what he can be like. He had to resign twice. But I think that was astonishing. And for those of us, I was housing planning minister at the time, dealing with potentially people losing their homes, their mortgages and everything else that was going on. My God, it was such hard work that was going on. And Alistair Darling, who was a lovely man, worked so hard. And then to find out that the person who was the closest advisor to the Prime Minister at that time, Gordon Brown, it was Peter to whom he turned, was basically selling us all out. Mm. And I think that sense of betrayal is really strong. The other side of it, though, is about how the government's handling this, how Keir Starmer's handling the situation. I certainly don't think PMQ's was his finest day. I, again, think some of these issues about their judgment, about how they deal with these things, how they read the room in terms of how Parliament's feeling about it, how the Parliamentary Labour Party's feeling about things. I don't think, apart from his first line, which was lie, 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 that he was really prepared for the sort of questions that were absolutely bound to be coming across the floor from Kemi Badenoch.
And he looked a broken man, didn't he?
I mean, I think he just sort of, she was actually, asked straightforward questions, really, very directly. There was no huge amount of theatre and drama with her. There was no mock sort of acting that you often get at the Dispatch. But she just asked, to be fair, she asked a straight question in a straightforward way, and he found it difficult. He found it difficult to answer. And when he said that he was aware, before he decided to make Mandelson the ambassador, that he had stayed in the apartment, even though Epstein had been convicted of procuring a 14-year-old for sexual purposes, I think that was just astounding for people to hear that out loud in the Parliament, because, again, he then had to make a judgment about weighing all the information he had up, what tipped the balance for him to then think that he was the best person for that job.
Morgan McSweeney tipped the balance.
Well, no, but that's not fair, is it, really? Because on the one hand, advisors are important, but fundamentally politicians make the decision.
Is it over?
I don't think it's over. I think it's precarious at the moment. I don't think there's an appetite to do anything to remove Keir Starmer right now. I think some of the people calling for Morgan McSweeney or the people in number 10 to go, I think they need to be mindful that that is a substitute for talking about Keir Starmer. But I think, there was even before this week, let's be honest about it, even before this week, given all the stuff with Andy Burnham that's happened in the last month and everything else and all the challenges and potentially to be Prime Minister and Labour leader, it was going to be a hard few months leading up to those local elections, and we got the by-election, obviously, this. And therefore, there was always going to have to be, and will be, a reckoning after those local elections to see what happens. So, I'm not thinking it's over. I don't think it's going to be a general election anytime soon, no matter what the Liberal Democrats and the Tories want.
I agree with that.
But I actually, but he is in charge. The choices he makes in the months ahead will be the big decider about what happens after those elections.
Ella Whelan.
I just really don't buy this angels and demons routine about the Labour Party, particularly during the New Labour years. The idea that everybody was just kind of doing their job and Mandelson was being so nefarious we couldn't even have imagined it. Whether or not it's... I don't buy that nobody knew his links with Epstein at any point. I think it's, like a sort of sixth form politics researcher could have found out what was publicly available. I think most of us are sick of hearing that routine. But I think probably more importantly for me is that Mandelson was part of a New Labour style kind of, global managerial class, for whom, the sort of international meetings mixed with business arrangements, mixed with sort of behind closed doors, social parties and social circles. That's how politics was done. That's how Blair liked to do politics. That's how Starmer likes to do politics. His famous "I like Davos better than Westminster" line. So this is
He didn't actually go to Davos this year.
Well, yeah, but
I've never been to Davos.
It's the famous line. And this is what the Labour Party has been like since Blair, and Mandelson is a creature of that. Now, whether or not individual MPs or ministers, whoever actually knew that he was staying in a pedo's apartment, maybe I can accept some of them weren't party to that information. But for me, the more egregious point is not that this guy was the Prince of Darkness or whatever he was called, but it was the fact that, you know, the Labour Party under Keir Starmer has liked to portray itself, has gone over and above, you know, efforts to portray itself as squeaky clean, not Tory sleaze, not the nasty party, doing things properly, adults in the room. And time again, whether it's the, you know, passes for glasses or, you know, people forget that Tony Blair was, you know, questioned by the police twice under the Cash for Honour scandal. I mean, this is what the Labour Party does, like any other party. But the hypocrisy of trying to portray themselves as squeaky clean while these scandals were not just ongoing but known. You know, like, and it doesn't take. It's not party political to say this. I was watching on social media, even people like Lewis Goodall and stuff like that coming out and saying, you know, who would usually, I think, probably be loath to make outright statements about this, said Starmer didn't do it in spite of the Epstein appointments. It's because of the Epstein appointments. So, like, let's not have this routine of shock and awe.
No, I didn't say that.
Like, you know,
nobody's saying that.
You guys made a decision. You made a decision. Stick by it. I mean,
what
decision?
What decision are you saying?
You know, I just
what decision you're talking about?
I think that there was a sort of conscious decision that this man who knew the dirty, greasy polls to pull and the workings of how, in particular, international politics and diplomacy and all of that happens at the moment. Doesn't matter what he did about women. Doesn't matter what he did with Epstein. We need him right now. So there was a moral judgment was made. It wasn't a lack of moral judgment. A moral judgment was made.
By who?
And so by Keir Starmer, by his advisors, and
I think
during during the new Labour years, when a lot of this was going on, and you know, and maybe not Epstein, but other, you know, it's not just like Epstein is the one demon in all of this.
The other point, I think, just developing your point, is, you know, how much information did Mandelson have on other ministers? How is it that he could be kicked out of government twice, then become ennobled, then become an ambassador, the Prime Minister turning a blind eye, even though the security services were warning him of what was going on? How much of a hold does Mandelson have on other ministers, both past and present? And I absolutely excuse you, Caroline, because we've never met before, but I have a high regard for everything you've done for this country. But it seems to me that there's some very great sickness at the top of government. And Ella touched on it as well. This marrying of big money with big power behind closed doors, that is wrong.
But that happens across the party.
And
that is wrong. And that has to stop.
I mean, Peter Mandelson, when I remember, was on, when he was on the yacht with George Osborne with some millionaire. Yeah, sorry, I can't even pronounce the name. Deripaska. I mean, you know, there is about people across parties who are mesmerised by big money.
But Caroline, you know, all these people taking themselves off to Davos.
So I've never said that we're all angels in the Labour Party, and where I would agree with you, we have to be a bit careful sometimes, like being like we're the Roundheads and they're the Cavaliers, because it comes back and bites you if you throw stones in glass houses and then people fail. And there's plenty of male politicians in the last couple of parliaments who, for a number of different reasons, often with sexual issues behind it, who've had to stand down and be suspended, and that's in the Labour Party just like anywhere else.
But the difference is that the Labour Party has literally made its sort of opening of entry into government all about how we are different morally, psychologically, emotionally.
Put that
Lord Ali, yeah.
But I think that the thing that I wanted to say, which I think is linked to the angels and demons thing, is I couldn't bear listening to his speech today, which, you know, opening with this sort of holier than thou, I'm so sorry. But what I really want to be talking about is how great I am at everything. And you're like, hang on a minute, to Robbie's question, I think he should go, but not because of Epstein, but because how rubbish he is at everything, and because how rubbish this government is at everything. I mean, trying to say that you're doing something for the high street's on its knees. Going to any pub and ask them what's the problem.
We had 14 years of a Tory government who did nothing for those high streets, I have to say. I mean, I don't want to get
into that excuse to an extent,
but, you know, come on.
Now getting old.
Come on. We saw a situation where wages stagnated, where people didn't get a pay rise during those 14 years. None of the things were attended to. Some removing 20,000 police officers and then trying to backfill them in a couple of months.
You've had enough time in government for something to have been made even slightly better now. It hasn't even got better. It's actually getting worse.
Inflation might be down to 2% in a couple of months.
That's because there's absolutely nothing happening in the economy.
Should we move on? I think we should. It's 18 minutes past 8.
LBC. Attention Ask Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
19 minutes past 8 on LBC. Let me reintroduce my panel. Caroline Flint is here, former Labour MP and Minister. Ben Habib, leader of Advance UK. Advance UK, 30-second elevator pitch. What is it?
Advance UK is the party that reform should have been, a party which has a political philosophy and at the heart of which it puts the sovereignty and prosperity of the United Kingdom. Eschewing the international order, restoring democracy, restoring equality under the law, and understanding that we are the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in all its parts and for all its people.
But without Nigel Farage.
Without Nigel Farage, clearly, yeah.
Right, Ella Whelan, columnist for the Daily Telegraph, and Bethany Dawson, reporter for Politico London. Playbook, just explain what that is for those who are mad enough not to subscribe.
The uninitiated, we are a morning newsletter that gives you everything you need to know about Westminster and beyond, and there's even some puns if we're awake enough to put them in.
And it's actually quite amusing at times, isn't it? Depending on who writes it.
Well, listen, I'm on it every day, and so I think it's
hilarious when you do it.
Thrilling and hilarious every day.
Right, let's go to another question. It's from Simon in Prestatyn, who says, will Donald Trump changing his mind over the Chagos Islands again and now being in favour of Starmer's deal save Keir Starmer? Now, having called the deal to pass sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius an act of great stupidity only 2 weeks ago, Trump has now posted on Truth Social that he understands that the deal the Prime Minister has made, according to many, the best he could make. Although I wish I could do a Donald Trump impression, but I just can't.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Though he also vowed that he also retains the right to militarily secure and reinforce the joint Anglo-American military base on the island of Diego Garcia. Any of you particular experts on the Chagos Islands?
Not a particular expert, but I read the Truth Social post as intensely damning. I mean, I know Trump is always trying to sort of get in a few slights in any of his posts, but I read it as saying, okay, I'll accept it, but it's rubbish anyway. And anyway, I reserve the right to completely dismiss it and go in there and do what I have to do. So I mean, if Number 10 tries to spin this as some kind of great acceptance and success, that would be completely misrepresenting what the dynamic seems to be.
But the fact he has accepted that it's got to go ahead, I mean, that's something.
Well, I mean, sure, that's something, but it's not, if, in relation to the question, in order to try and portray it as some kind of sign that the US-UK relationship is wonderful, very healthy, acting as it should. It doesn't. I don't think it shows that at all. And, that none of these sort of, I think the issues that other people care about, Chagos being for the Chagosians, the questions around sovereignty have been answered in any of this, and they still stand. So I just think it's an embarrassment.
Caroline?
Well, in answer to the question, I don't think that the outcome of what happens to the Chagos Islands is going to have people rushing into the polling booths saying, I'm really glad out of all the things that the Labour government do, they've solved that one. I'm voting for them. So I don't think Keir Starmer or anyone should put all their eggs in that basket. I think what's interesting about, just the style of the way President Trump works is he often, on issues, comes out, shouting, this is terrible, this is awful, this is sort of everything else, and against it, and everyone goes, this sort of thing. And then later he comes back and it's all, oh yeah.
It's like Greenland. I mean, Greenland might not as well not have happened.
Exactly. It's all okay now. So, I mean, what's interesting in terms of dynamics, I mean, I'm sure Keir Starmer and, those most involved in government will be pleased about this. Okay, that's one bit of noise we don't have to particularly worry about at this moment. I think probably Nigel Farage is a bit disappointed because he probably thought that, oh, good, Trump's on our side on this issue, So yeah, that's what I could just say on this, really.
Bethany, the legislation had to be paused in Parliament, didn't it? So presumably that can now restart.
I think it can restart, but I can't say I'm an expert on this kind of legislation. But I think in terms of whether or not this Save Starmer. I don't really think there's any Truth Social post that will save anyone, mainly because, if we're mad at Keir Starmer for his U-turns, then people should be really much angrier with Trump's, because it feels like every day he sort of changes his mind on what's happening, and that's what makes the UK-US relationship at the moment so difficult, because he will, it might be that he has a bad day, and then there's a Truth Social post later saying, actually, this is an awful deal, and also I don't like that man, and then Number 10 have to go back and worry about it. So I think in terms of Trump's ability actually to calm any issue, it's quite difficult because his response to something always feels very short-lived.
Ben?
Well, I completely agree with Ella. I don't think this is an endorsement of the Chagos deal. This is I reserve my position from the United States as far as Chagos is concerned. But the Chagos deal is not out of the woods yet. There is a judicial review taking place for the human rights of the Chagosians, which is being pioneered and been put forward, and I've donated to it, by a group called the Great British Political Action Committee under a lady called Claire Bullivant. And we were very, very happy earlier today when the vote was put on hold in the House of Lords, and now all of a sudden we're less happy this evening. But it's not over until... Is it the fat woman sings? Can you say that kind of thing?
You're not allowed to say that anymore.
You can't say that kind of thing. But that, it's not over until it's over, and we will continue to fight this. The Chagos deal, in all the things that is wrong with it, the worst thing about it is that it's trampled all over the Chagosians, which it purported to champion in the recitals to the treaty. It starts off with this grand declaration that we're going to be looking after the human rights of the Chagosians, and actually then it proceeds to trample all over them. And they have a right to be heard on this, and we're going to do our best to make sure that they are heard in court.
OK, thank you very much for that. Right, let's move on to another question from Kai. Does the panel agree it would be an utter disgrace to spend 61 years and £40 billion on refurbishing Parliament, given the needs for funding elsewhere? Shouldn't we turn Parliament into a museum and move its functions to a new building which is actually suitable? Now, a bit of background to this. Two plans have been put forward for the refurbishment of the Palace of Westminster. One would involve MPs and peers moving out, and it would take 19 to 24 years and cost up to £15.6 billion, while the work's being done while they stay in the building would take between 38 and 61 years to be completed, costing up to £39.2 billion. I mean, this debate has been going on ever since I first worked in Parliament in 1986. Bethany, you are the only one of the current panel to work in the building. What's it like?
It is falling apart. That we had a thing, there was no heating. On Monday, the House of Lords and the House of Commons didn't have heating. There is asbestos. There are constantly in Portcullis House, which is kind of the main, one of the main sitting meeting areas.
And that's new.
That's the new bit. There are constant buckets for water to come through. When it's raining, you have to really make sure.
It's still happening,
Look, if it's a good hair day and you're in there, you must be very careful. And there are. It's inaccessible for disabled people. It's. I can list so many things that are wrong with it. It is falling apart. It is unsafe, and there is kind of not very funny jokes going round of like, well, when's the next Great Fire of Westminster going to be? When is this all? When is this now going to be an emergency? And when is, as you say, this conversation has been going on for such a long time.
People are drawing parallels to Notre Dame, obviously.
Yes, there is going to be a point where this conversation can't just be sort of an interesting muse. It is going to have to be something that is fixed. But, when you put those numbers and indeed those years on paper, it is an awful amount of money that we're going to have to spend. And I think the point I do want to make, it's been described as refurbishing. There is a little bit of that which makes it sound like sort of plumping the sofa cushions or getting new carpets down. It is getting rid of asbestos. It's making it accessible. It's making sure that people aren't hurt by the building. But so there is a lot of work that needs to be done. But yes, it is quite, when you know the laundry list of things that the government has to fix and pay for, it is a difficult sell to make.
I think Kemi Badenoch will happily do this, because a video went viral today of her giving an interview from inside the Palace of Westminster when a mouse ran past in the background. Now, that could have been career-defining for her, couldn't it? Because if she sort of if she was very afraid of mice or something, I mean, she sort of just went ballistic, or if she'd stamped on it, which I can imagine her doing.
You can please some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all the time.
Caroline, what do you think should be done?
I think they just need to make a decision, quite frankly. It's really ridiculous. I mean, I had a bucket in my office in Portcullis House, and that was new when I first sort of came in 97. And you just do wonder. I mean, there's lots of issues around the old place, but when you've got actually a relatively new building, I don't know who the construction company was there, but it was ridiculous having a bucket above a light fitting, I have to say, because they had to put it there as it came through. But it's a lack of decision making on the whole thing, because, you know, MPs, bless them, you know, they can be really precious about, oh my God, if we move out to the Queen Elizabeth II Centre, or I think at one time they were talking about the old health office, Richmond House, being used as well, and the car park behind that taken up. They'll never let us back in. We'll never get back into this place. So decisions aren't made, and then the costs just go up and up and up. I do think actually Parliament is probably one of the most iconic buildings in the world. I mean, it's, you know, everyone knows it from everywhere. I like the fact it's working, and so I'm a bit romantic about all that thing, but they need to make a decision and show, at least with the Houses of Parliament, whatever they decide to do, that actually they're going to make sure the budgets are right, they're not underestimating the costs, they're honest with the public about it, there's transparency about what's going on, but for flipping heck's sake, make a decision.
Well saved. Ben Habib.
Well, I think whatever they do with the building, unless they knock it down, it's going to require refurbishment and upgrading, whether Parliament continues to occupy it or not. The building is in fundamental need of TLC. But I think what, you know, having been a member of the European Parliament and watched some other parliaments across the world, I think what would be tragic is to lose the interactivity that we have in our Commons, which is a really lively, energised parliament. There's nothing more sterile than the European Parliament. It is absolutely the dumbing down of debate. There's an absence of debate. I mean, there literally is an absence of debate. They even switch you off if you go beyond your allotted time.
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, you only get 30 seconds if you're lucky, and then your microphone goes off. I think it would be a great shame to lose the actual floor of the Commons and the floor of the Lords. And frankly, where the MPs sit and they do their business can be...
Well, there was a scheme that they were going to build a big barge that would be by the side of the Thames, and they would actually recreate the chamber, which I thought was a great idea. Ella? I
think it should be... You know, the money is a lot, but I think it's an iconic building. It's part of history. It's very important to maintain it. I have been in a few times helping out Claire Fox, who's a baroness there, and it's wonderful to walk around, and the library is like incredible for anyone going in there to visit, and school kids and all the rest of it. But I completely agree with the point. They should just get on with doing it. As funny enough, I'm one of the dads at one of my kids' play groups is an engineer. He's always telling me about all going in the basement stuff, and he says that one of the biggest problems is that it's not just a lack of decision making on actually doing it, but that, like anything in this country at the moment or for the last few decades, making any kind of building changes or action is completely impossible because there's umpteen people raising queries, regulations, architects, scratching their chins, all the rest of it. So this has become kind of symbolic of our problem with everything, whether it's HS2 or anything else.
Right, more questions to our panel. 0345 6060 973. It's 8:32 on LBC. Let's get the latest news headlines with Daryl Jackson.
The Conservative leaders told LBC the Prime Minister or his Chief of Staff should lose their job over Peter Mandelson's appointment. Sir Keir Starmer's apologised for falling for Mandelson's claims about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein before he was made US ambassador. A 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a teacher was attacked at a school in Pembrokeshire. Milford Haven Comprehensive was put into lockdown for a while earlier. And Ukraine and Russia have agreed to swap prisoners and civilians following trilateral talks with the US in Abu Dhabi. More discussions on ending the war will take place in the coming weeks. LBC weather, spells of rain continuing to move across the UK tonight. Drier in the northwest, a low of -1.
This is LBC.
Taxis
Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:35 on LBC. Debbie says, Ian, just started watching. Are your studios near Skies? As Caroline was just on the Politics Hub alongside Nick Ferrari. Caroline can't get enough of LBC presenters.
I love them.
We tried to push her out the studio, but she insisted on staying.
I know, let me in.
So, Caroline Flint is here, former Labour MP and Minister. Ben Habib, leader of Advance UK. Ella Whelan, columnist for the Daily Telegraph and organiser of the Battle of Ideas Festival. That's October, isn't it?
Yes.
So you're in a bit of a lull at the moment.
Well, we're just watching the news, figuring out what to make plans for and then cancel when inevitably something else happens.
And Bethany Dawson is a reporter for Politico London Playbook. Right, a text question from Andrew in Fulham. Today, the Bank of England downgraded its UK growth expectations and signalled unemployment will continue to rise above its original expectations. Does the panel have confidence in the economic direction this government is taking the country? And are more job losses and a slowing of the economy a price worth paying for this direction of travel? Ben.
So the direction of travel of economic management has largely been the same ever since Blair came into office. And it is increasingly moved towards wealth redistribution rather than wealth creation, dependency rather than aspiration, the dumbing down, the infantilizing of the people of this country as the government takes ever more control of our lives, both monetarily and from a regulatory perspective. And every single government has justified doing more of that on the basis that any other form of governance would collapse the economy, because if with growth comes inflation, with inflation comes interest rates going up, the debt burden can't be borne, and so on and so forth. So we have got ourselves down a cul-de-sac out of which those who govern us seem unable to remove themselves. Actually, what this country needs is a dramatic change in direction, a 180-degree change in economic management. Ella made a very good point about when she was talking about the House of about Parliament, that we're so ham-fisted with regulations. Leave aside tax for a moment. We're so ham-fisted with regulations, the drive to net zero, getting energy performance certificates for buildings up to certain levels, that we can't actually do stuff economically and profitably. And what we've got to do is get rid of all these regulations that hamper British businesses, get rid of net zero, champion British interests, put forward our industries, forget about all these trade deals globally that end up deindustrializing the United Kingdom, undermining our own workforce, bring employment back to this country, cut taxes as well, cut welfare, because the dependency culture has to end. The Labour government's been absolutely hopeless at cutting welfare. They tried to cut 1.7% of the welfare bill and ended up actually paying more out as a result of the debates that they had in Commons. We've got to change the way this country is governed. And unless and until we wake up to the requirement for that change, the creation of wealth, the reinstitution of aspiration, those are the two key things. Unless we wake up to that, this country is going down an economic plug hole.
Now, I should say the Bank of England today reduced its forecast for our economic growth from 1.2% this year to 0.9%. It's also predicted that unemployment will rise from 5% to 5.3%. Caroline?
I think the government, in many respects, started well in this particular space, because I think they had you had a real sense that they were going to drive, for example, removing some of the obstacles that get way in making decisions, planning decisions. And I think early on in the government, you had a real sense that there was a drive for some of this, and as part of their mission that they wanted to really focus on. And that was actually welcomed. Some of those initiatives were welcomed by businesses large and small. It somehow has lost sort of some track on that for different reasons. And I do believe that's one of the areas the government needs to get back on track, because ultimately it is not sustainable to carry all these people who are not in working age. We can't pay for things if people aren't working. And not only is that good for them, it's actually good, I think, for people socially as well as economically. And it has to be, and mentally, I agree, and good for the country as well. And, fundamentally, for our country to grow, it is about making sure that our schools are good, that our kids are getting the right skills, they get access to the right apprenticeships, that we are putting investment where it's going to count. And I do think government has a role to play in supporting that and enabling not just our cities, and that was always my big issue, I suppose, is our cities did pretty well under the Labour government from 97. There's no doubt about it. There was a renaissance in a lot of our cities. But actually over, towards the end of that Labour government, and also particularly when the financial crash happened, it revealed that on one level it looked like we were doing well, but that wasn't equal across the country. And lots of our towns has had the guts ripped out of them and it had never gone back. And we're still dealing with that today. You can't be romantic about that. You can't reinvent the sort of industrial past. But there has to be an agenda for growth. And I really believe that some of the focus for the government needs to get back onto that. In fact, it should be its primary focus.
But we are continuing to deindustrialise the country. The trade deal that Starmer just did with India, that doesn't help the United Kingdom. That just offshores more jobs and gives more.
Can I ask you something, Ben? Because I hear what you're saying and I understand, because all those business people that went out with Keir Starmer on these various in China the other week, but also on other trade delegations. Sometimes when I sit back, what I hear is actually what they want to do is they've got their British businesses. But what they actually want to do is access to the markets, but also access to those workforces overseas. They don't want to necessarily make the products here in the UK. And that has been, I think, something that's happened over decades
absolutely.
now. And I would like to feel we could do more making stuff in Britain. Because if one thing the pandemic showed us is that we had lost the skills to actually make things when suddenly the world shuts down.
Okay, I completely agree. Yeah.
No, I was just looking back from my notes I've got in front of me of when Rachel Reeves did that big sort of announcement, and the things that she blamed the problems with the economy on was Tory austerity, Brexit deal, and the pandemic. So it's like this government has no willingness to engage with what the actual issues are around the economic slump. And to be fair to them, it's obviously not just happened in the last few years. It's sort of been, 50 years in the making, in terms of a lack of dealing with productivity, managerial technocratic politics, no aspirational agendas for growth, all the rest of it, that's long-standing. It seems to me, I think it's obvious that there are two things that you could do that would genuinely change the direction and make some real, garner some real momentum in relation to the economy. One is to just completely reassess spending and be completely brutal of it, have three core functions of the state: defence, law and order, and provision of essential public goods. So whether that's, good welfare, safety net, transport, schooling 16, the things that, survival things of a state, and everything else, get rid of it. To take one example, fundamental healthcare on the NHS and all of the other bloated bits of it, whether it's public health messaging, all the rest of it, just slash it, get rid of it, and focus your energies on the kind of things that could revolutionise productivity. Doing something really exciting, investing in R&D, science and technology, being really good at something like that. And then the second thing, which is as important, is to completely scrap the green agenda. You cannot have a growth agenda and a green agenda 100%. At the same time. You've got to get rid of...
Scrap it or reform it?
Well, get rid of net zero.
Well, let's say reform it to an inch of its life.
Who could politically survive those massive reforms, though? Even if someone came in, who could survive doing that?
I'll tell you who shouldn't survive it. Ed Miliband's got to go. People like that who have there's the sort of the dogmatic green ideology that infects the Labour Party as much as any other party, but in particular the Labour Party has got to get a reality check and realise that 30 years of subsidies for wind power, for example, it hasn't worked, and yet Ed Miliband wants 20 more years.
Can I just mention one thing? You mentioned
there is a lack of dealing with reality here for what the green agenda means for the growth agenda and indeed people's quality of life.
I think Labour are going to be, again, I said before that there are headache moments or bang your head against the wall moments, and these kind of downgrading figures are one of them. And I think, I don't think it's wrong at all for Rachel Reeves to list, as you were saying, Anna, the kind of the things that might have caused this economic slump. But people are going to get and have got tired of that very quickly, because whilst economists may say that it's true, I'm not an economist, but whilst they might say it's true, voters don't have patience anymore. They want to see a change. I'm not certain they're going to want to see a change that is quite as revolutionary as the ones you're pitching. Maybe Rachel Reeves will disagree with me. Maybe that's her. Maybe she would love it. But I think people are impatient, and every time that people hear stats like this and see this, that it's going to be another reason for them to not trust the government, not buy into the messaging that things are going to change. Labour were elected on a manifesto of change, and they're going to need to start paddling very fast to make it happen.
OK, we'll take some more of your questions in just a moment. It's 8:45.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
With the calls for Keir Starmer's resignation getting louder and louder, we ask, is that really fair, or is it just the latest example of Westminster hypocrisy?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
At
Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
On the panel with me, Caroline Flint, Ben Habib, Ella Whelan and Bethany Dawson. Cornelius in Colchester says Ben Habib for Prime Minister. Now, this is possibly a minority view, Ben, but
it will be a majority. It will soon be a majority view with any luck.
OK, right. Let's take another question from Hannah in Blackpool. So many people are obsessed with taking away support at school for children who really need it. Why are children so often put last? Is it because they can't vote? Now, ministers have been warned of another possible rebellion by Labour backbenchers over their plans to bring down the cost of special educational needs provision. But council leaders in England have warned that 4 in 5 local authorities will end up, in effect, bankrupt unless significant reforms to SEND provisions are made. Ella Whelan.
I think this is one of those moments where the government is going to have to find their stomach and do something decisive about this. The category of special educational needs has become so intensely bloated and blurred lines and kind of unrecognisable that what's happening is I'm seeing it in nurseries, with really young kids, where my kids go, are kids who are being diagnosed, referred on for SEND provision, who absolutely don't need it, are flooding.
Why are they being referred then?
Because there is a fashion for diagnosing children at bizarrely young ages with ADHD, with autism, with any kind of special educational need, who are children who do not need it, which means that the system is so overburdened that children who really do need special provisions and do need the resources are unable to get them. It's incredibly unfair. But there's also, I mean, this is a fight that has to be taken to sort of, a sort of the teacher level, because there's, I think, a huge amount of people who work in education are completely captured by this idea that any behavioural issue in young people, young children, even nursery age children, is explainable by neurodivergency, by some kind of by the SEND playbook, and it's insane. It's absolutely insane, and it's doing children a horrendous disservice. So somebody needs to come in and just sort of shake people out of this, because there is an obsession with SEND, which means that kids who actually have the problems, who really, really are autistic, who really can't sit in a normal classroom, are just getting forgotten, and it's terrible. The government's going to have to take the fight to a very minute level and tell people to cop on about this.
Bethany?
I think the issue is that actually has been is that there hasn't been an obsession with SEND. For such a long time, the sector has been completely ignored. There have been so many families who have had to fight so hard to get support for their children that now, as you say... No, but for a long time it has been...
the last 20 years.
OK, but my point I am making now is that there has been such a chronic underfunding, so many people been ignored, that yes, we get to the point now where culture is changing over diagnoses. More people are seeking EHCPs, those special educational needs support packages, where the system was creaking for such a long time. It is now just breaking. This is a massive problem and has been for a long time. And it is one of those things that now this government is going to have to sit up and fix. But they're having to, fix problems with the statement. The statement hasn't existed for years. And so it's one of these issues where actually how long it has been ignored for now means that there is no choice but to pay full attention to it.
Or you could tell people that their kids don't have a problem with them and to just get on with it. I mean, that's what I mean. You've got to get tough about this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ben?
Well, I just want to applaud Ella, perhaps for the third time this programme, for having the bravery to say...
Are you trying to recruit her?
No, I'm not trying to recruit her. No, I'm not trying to recruit her. I'm certainly not trying to do anything beyond just engage in friendly debate with Ella and others on this panel. But it takes bravery to say what you just said, because a lot of people would jump down your throat and say, how dare you question the validity of my child's autism or ADHD or whatever. But there is a victimhood culture that has gone alongside this dependency culture that we've created, and it permeates all the way through society. However, there are undoubtedly children who do need special assistance, and it is a symptom of a country where the economy is absolutely broken, that it is unable to deal with these fundamental needs. And it's a symptom that is mirrored in lots of different parts. Our inability to function the NHS properly, our housing inability to build houses, our inability to have a first-class military like we used to. Everything you look at in the United Kingdom, it looks a bit like Parliament does, in a dire state. I mean, physically, the building, not just the people. In a dire state. And we've got to change the way this country is governed if we're going to, look after our children, amongst other things.
Caroline?
So I think the system for SEND is broken. When you look at the amounts of money not actually being spent on direct engagement with children with different needs, spent on taxes, I mean, the bills are out of control. And the last Conservative government, I mean, when it comes to local government finance, their hands are quite tightly bound about what they can do and what they can't do. And what the last Tory government did, it said to local authorities, we're going to allow you to go beyond your budget, which you're not meant to do, in order to pay for SEND. That was putting off a discussion about an issue that really needs attention. I agree that when it comes to autism and ADHD, a lot of families, I think genuinely sometimes, often, believe that is the issue, but it's not necessarily the issue. But that doesn't mean there's not something going on with that child that needs to be addressed. And that's the conversation we need to have. West Streeting has initiated a review, actually, of looking at the issues around diagnosis of autism and ADHD. And the other thing about some of this is, for some children with this, and young people and adults, the there is quite intensive engagement and support that's needed, and sometimes medication. For others, it isn't. I mean, neurodiversity is not a doom loop for lots of people. I know some incredibly successful people. GCHQ actually actively recruits people from a diverse aspects of their personality and who they are. And I think we've got to get out of this idea that everything requires a statement. That does not mean that you don't need something to help with children, but we're not having that discussion. And that's a big discussion, because there are clearly families out there who are not getting the support they need for their children, not just as a young children, but as they grow into adult. And I think one of the things I know from some of my casework in the past, parents are really worried about when a child goes from the teenage years into adulthood, losing some support that they're going to need for the rest of their lives. We talk about social care. A growing demographic in terms of social care is older people, because our population is living longer. But there's also a lot of young adults within that need support as well. So that we really need to make sure this doesn't just become a binary issue here. It is complex and difficult, but I think there's a way through this. And can I just give a plug as well? The early years. I saw a report the other week which indicated, and it's been happening for years, 25% of our children arriving in reception class not toilet trained. Yeah. Children who are arriving who don't know how to turn a page of a book, but they know how to do this. If anyone's watching this. Scrolling, that's the word. Thank you for that. Their vocabulary is minimal. And the early years are such an important space in which to address, and again, not every family needs the same sort of intervention, address some of the issues. Because if you arrive as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old in school with that, the likelihood is you're 18 months, 2 years behind your peers, and that could follow you through a school. Now, if that doesn't create anxiety and stress for that child as they grow older, I don't know what does. So let's get on to the prevention side of this.
Well, Ali, you probably realised your comments would provoke a bit of comment from our listeners. There's one here saying the woman, i.e. you, who said ADHD and autism are a fashion is absolutely abhorrent. What a disgusting thing to say, and how insulting to parents of children with those conditions.
I think you can understand that ADHD, I'm less convinced about ADHD, but autism is certainly is a very serious thing. And we've got an severely autistic child in my family. Wonderful boy. We love him very much. His father, my cousin, born and bred Londoner, had to move out way, way, way out of the city he was born in to get a school place for his child, because it was completely impossible. This is what I'm talking about in terms of a fashionable desire to statement up and diagnose children, to explain away behavioural problems or whatever else it is, means that a system gets bloated and isn't able to serve the kids that really need it. I want to go on a huge rant about intervention into early years, about toothbrushing in nurseries and stuff like that. I won't, because you'll kill me. But please,
I would agree with every word that you would say.
Intervention into family life from the state, please, because it is the root of so many problems with parental authority, parental confidence, and the reason why parents turn up at nurseries and say, please statement my kids, because I have no idea what to do with them.
Yeah.
Get off parents'
But good intervention doesn't infantilise parents.
It absolutely does.
Doesn't. It shouldn't. Good intervention doesn't. Bad intervention
please
does.
come to my kids' nursery and watch the poor women try to brush teeth in the nursery. It's just such a stupid, ridiculous...
and in that same survey that Caroline referred to, I think they were saying that teachers or teaching assistants are spending 90 minutes of their working day changing a
And that shouldn't be happening.
No.
That should not be happening.
Really shouldn't. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go to our fun question. Christoph in West Sussex. Iain, with Margot Robbie hanging out around outside your building in Leicester Square tonight for the Wuthering Heights premiere, there was a lot of screaming in our office going on. People were rushing to the window to have a look. I said, who's Margot Robbie? But there we are. What's the panel's favourite novel? I adore Wuthering Heights, says Christoph. Bethany.
I obviously have forgotten every novel I have ever read, but the latest book that I read that I had to put down and sort of experience emotional distress from was I Who Have Never Known Men. I read it last weekend. It's by Jacqueline Hartman. It's actually quite an old novel. It's a French novel translated into English about 40 women who were trapped in a cage underground and then escaped, and it was harrowing and it was incredibly beautifully written, and I would read it with caution because I am slightly scarred, but it was beautiful. Can't see Margot Robbie starring in a live-action remake of it, though.
Ben?
Does it have to be fiction, or can it be
Well, that's kind of the thing with a novel.
Is it? Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't read many novels. I read historical books. But I suppose Catcher in the Rye was a very important book for me, which I read many, many years ago. But it's always stuck with me the sort of progression through adolescence and all the challenges of that.
Ella?
I'm going to the Galentine's. The thing is coming out on the 13th. I'm doing the Galentine's Wuthering Heights thing. I'm really excited, even though it looks like they've absolutely trashed the novel.
Really?
And, having Margot Robbie playing this sort of plummy English posh accent is a complete betrayal of Cathy. But anyway, I'm going to have fun with it. Has to be Jane Eyre, the ultimate romance, feminist.
I won that as a prize at primary school.
And do you remember reading it?
I do remember reading it.
It was life-changing for me.
Since,
My mother read it to me in bed every night, and it was like, it was giving me my love of reading.
I remember going to see Heathcliff the Musical starring Cliff Richard. Caroline?
I actually watched the film Jane Eyre over Christmas. Joan Fontaine, I think it was in it, and Orson Welles. It's very good. I think it's on iPlayer, if I'm allowed to say that to anyone watching. So yeah, I mean, they are great, the Bronte sisters. But I have to say, I mean, it was good. It was Jane Austen for me, probably Pride and Prejudice. I thought that the humour in it, just all the dynamics going on in that. And there's obviously been many, many, many films that have put it into different contexts and settings ever since, and I'm sure there'll be more to come. But yes, and on my birthday last year, I went up to a stately home in the northwest, which uses part of the Pemberley part of this sort of Jane Austen, where he's meant to come out of the water and all of this sort of thing. So yeah, good for the girls, the girl novelists.
Well, I'm going to bring the level down a bit, and I'm going to pick Watership Down by Richard Adams and The Rats by James Herbert. Anyway, thank you all very much for coming on the panel tonight. On Monday, we have the campaigner and former Love Island contestant Sharon Gafka, plus LBC's own James Hansen, plus 2 unnamed guests at the moment. Cora will be busy recruiting them tomorrow. Right, in the next hour, I work all night, I work all day, come on, to pay the bills I have to... none of them are getting this. Ain't it sad? Money, money, money.
Yes.
Does money make you happy? Because according to Elon Musk, it really doesn't. He's issued a cryptic message today that's sparked a flurry of public reaction. He said, whoever said money can't buy happiness really knew what they were talking about. And then a little sad emoji. I wonder what's got to him. Can you be happy without money? That's the question for the next hour. 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the Prime Minister has apologised to Jeffrey Epstein's victims for falling for Peter Mandelson's lies after appointing him as his ambassador to the US. Sir Keir Starmer says he regrets the decision following allegations Mandelson was passing sensitive information to the late sex offender. There have been suggestions Epstein had links to Russian authorities. Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, has told LBC he thinks the Prime Minister is being complacent about that.
A lot of sources are worried that what Epstein was doing was almost classic KGB sting operations with honey traps with Russian young women, and so the sense that this was organised in some depth is deeply troubling.
Mandelson denies any wrongdoing. A 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a teacher was attacked with a weapon at a school in Pembrokeshire. Milford Haven Comprehensive was put into lockdown earlier. An inquiry has found the deaths of at least 30 people who died while attempting to cross the English Channel could have been prevented. Their inflatable vessel overturned in November 2021 during one of the deadliest small boat crossings on record. Only 2 people survived. Officials investigating the suspected kidnap of a mother of an American TV presenter believe she is still out there. Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy, was reported missing at the weekend after failing to turn up at church. Traces of blood have been found on the 84-year-old's porch at her home in Arizona. Here's the FBI's John Edwards.
We are aware of a ransom letter that was sent to the local media and then to national outlets. As with every lead, we are taking it seriously. And while we advise and recommend from a law enforcement perspective, any action taken on any ransom is ultimately decided by the family.
And two options have been put forward to restore the Houses of Parliament at a cost of up to £40 billion. One option would see all members of the House move out while work takes place. That would be quicker and cost less than that figure. But if the work was carried out in stages, it could take more than 60 years to complete. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 93 points at 10,309. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.14. LBC weather, spells of rain continuing to move across the UK tonight. Drier in the northwest, a low of -1. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
You see, if you aren't watching on Global Player, on the LBC app or the LBC YouTube channel, you have no idea what you've just missed. Me making a complete prat of myself by singing along with those songs. So that'll teach you. Anyway, now we are going to talk about money in this hour because of Elon Musk, the world's richest man. He has shared a cryptic message that has sparked a flurry of public reaction. This is what he said. Whoever said money can't buy happiness really knew what they were talking about. Now, that's quite cryptic, isn't it, I suppose? It was followed with a sad face emoji. Now, there is that old adage, isn't there? Money can't buy happiness. It's been cemented into our sort of cultural lexicon for decades, if not centuries. And it's traced back to the 18th century philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. It means that while money can provide comfort and security, it cannot guarantee genuine happiness, fulfillment, or emotional well-being, which come from non-material aspects of life, such as relationships, purpose, and inner peace. Now, I don't know about you, but I know I can think of 3 or 4 people off the top of my head who haven't got a brass farthing to rub together, and yet they're some of the happiest people I know. I would not be happy if I hadn't got any money at all. I think the lack of money, it probably is the most common reason for people being anxious. That where people don't feel secure, that you don't know sometimes where the next meal is coming from. And I suspect most people in their lives at some point or other have experienced that feeling of, well, I don't know how I'm going to exist now. I don't know where the next paycheck is coming from. But on the other hand, there will be people listening to this program right now who, as long as they've got just enough money to survive, they're not materialistic, they don't need to buy the latest TV set or the biggest car on offer, they don't need to show off to their friends, perfectly happy with just sort of the normal things that you expect from life that don't necessarily cost an arm and a leg. So the overweening question that I want to ask you in this hour is, does money buy you happiness? And I think it's all very well for people who do have a reasonable amount of money, or indeed a lot of money, to sit there and say, well, of course, I mean, I'm quite content in my life, but I'd be quite happy if I didn't have the money I have, because nobody believes a word they say. And this has been a bit of a running theme in my Where Politics Meets History podcast with Tessa Dunlop, who constantly accuses me of being very rich. Now, I don't know what about you, but my definition of being very rich is where you spend money without a care in the world. You don't need to look at your bank balance. You can buy more or less what you like, when you like, without a care. Now, that does confer a degree of happiness on you, I suppose, but is it sort of flimsy happiness where you buy a lot of expensive things, which in theory will make you happy, but it's a bit like an addiction. You then just want more of them, bigger ones, more expensive ones, better ones. Has money brought you happiness? Or are you perfectly happy living your life in a perfectly ordinary way where you don't feel the need to be materialistic at all? 0345 6060 973. And is money the cause of a lot of domestic arguments where one of you is a spendthrift and the other one sort of goes out spending money as if it didn't exist? I think that often happens where one person in the partnership is very good at managing money because maybe they've always had to, and the other one isn't because they've never had to. They've never really had to worry about it. And if you've, from the first job you've ever had, been earning a good amount of money, and you've never had to worry about money, you probably look at your partner and think, well, why are you doing this? Why are you saying I can't sort of book this trip to Las Vegas or whatever? Is money the cause of a lot of friction? And even if you are a multi-millionaire or multi-billionaire, as in the case of Elon Musk, why aren't you happy? Because you literally can do anything you want whenever you want. 0345 6060 973. Let's talk to Dr. Anne Kaplan-Mulholland, an entrepreneur, a media personality who's the owner of a castle in Kent and the star of the TV show Queen of the Castle, about her experiences of managing it. Now, Anne, welcome to the programme. Where's your castle? I live in Kent. I want to come and visit.
It's in Hythe, in Lim in Hythe.
Oh, very
so
nice.
Come visit the castle.
Very nice. So, what do you make of this pronouncement by Elon Musk?
I think Elon, I used to really admire him because he did a lot of good for the world. And I think he probably did find happiness because he took his money and he was helping. If you remember helping the men in the tunnels that were, the boys that were trapped, he was doing a lot of things that when you have money brings you a bit of joy, maybe selfish joy, but you can help people. Now, Elon, to me, has taken another shift and he has really become more politically motivated, he wants more. And I think Elon himself isn't finding his happiness through his money, and he's not finding it in his personal life. I don't think there's a correlation between money and happiness. Contentment, lack of anxiety, as you say, but money does not buy you happiness. But that doesn't mean you have to be miserable if you have money.
Some of the most miserable people I know have a lot of money. And it just doesn't seem to make them happy at all.
And some of the people, I travel in different circles, and some of the people I know that have a lot of money are extremely happy. And it's very interesting to be around groups of people that don't have money and seem a little bit miserable, people that have money that are miserable. I don't think that having money necessarily defines your happiness.
Can we define what having money actually means? Does that mean that you have a certain amount of savings that you have to fall back on that gives you the security that enables you to be happy? Is it having sort of a six-figure sum in the bank where you can literally go and spend whatever you like when you like? How do we define what having money really means?
Well, that's interesting too, because it really is relative. So you get to a certain point where you have a certain amount of money, you're comfortable, you don't have to worry about the rent, you don't have to worry about groceries. But that might be your happy spot and you might be content with that. But then as you have more money, there is a different, you're moving the bar on how much money do you live off of. So that bar moves as you have more money. And it surprised me because there's been many periods in my life where I couldn't afford certain things. And I remember one point when I went in and I saw these shoes I liked and I thought, I can actually buy them. And I was really nervous to buy these Christian Louboutin shoes because I could never buy anything that wasn't secondhand. And I've even bought things that are secondhand because I wanted the label, but they didn't fit me. So just so I could have Jimmy Choo shoes in my closet. And they were the wrong size.
That is madness.
Yes. And I still shop at secondhand stores. So I watch every dime still. So money to me doesn't change me, but it changes how people perceive me. And that's the hardest thing about having money.
That's very interesting because I better not say who, but someone close to me buys secondhand clothes when they have absolutely no need to, but wants to get good value for money. And I said, why are you doing this? I couldn't possibly wear a shirt that somebody else has worn. I said, well, just wash it. And there's
wash it.
certain logic to that. But now you're Canadian. Did Canadians in general have a different attitude to money than us Brits?
Very much so. I think it's in general, if you look at the British, they don't really like people with a lot of money. And when I did my doctorate in England and my master's of science, I noticed that people did not talk about money and people did not dress up with a lot of jewelry, even in the schools. It was not money talk. But money talk goes behind the scenes. In Britain, you're not to show off. You don't show off, but people know you have money, if that makes sense. In Canada, you show your wealth a little bit more.
So you're a bit of a halfway house between us and the Americans then?
A little bit of one. I did something very funny to Drake, who's my neighbor in Toronto. So we have a home in Toronto. And he put a phone booth outside of his house. And I went to Toronto 2 weeks ago. So I decided I'd put a British phone booth outside my house. So in a neighborhood you'd never expect phone booths. But to me, in that sense, money does buy you a little bit of happiness because you can have a sense of humor with it, where normally you wouldn't buy a phone booth.
It doesn't buy you class, does it? Because Alan Clark, are you familiar with Alan Clark, who owned Saltwood Castle, which can't be that far from you? He was a British politician, and he described the former Deputy Prime Minister, Michael Heseltine, as the sort of nouveau riche, the man who has to buy his own furniture. And there is a certain tradition in this country, I think, of sort of in the aristocracy, basically people who own castles, who on paper they're very rich, but actually they don't have a very good cash flow. So they delight in this sort of shabby chic, where they will sort of drive a 20-year-old Volvo estate rather than buy a new car because they actually haven't got the money. Yet they are seen by the general population as, well, they must be rich because they live in a castle.
That's true. That's true. And interesting enough, when I bought the castle, I didn't really think much about it. And then not long after, I went to church. And I needed to go to church. For me, that's important. But I went into church, and this is in the Kent area. And I hadn't thought much about me buying a castle. But everybody at church knew me. And I thought, how do they know who I am? Because I didn't realize that a castle kind of comes with this label.
And you have an entitled seat in the front pew, presumably, because you're the lady who owns the castle.
Well, the nice part about the people at church is they have welcomed me in. I can have tea with everyone. And I don't feel when I'm at church that I'm a castle owner. I feel like I'm a church member. But I do wear Christian Louboutin shoes to church. So when I do my communion, you can see the red bottoms. So there's a little bit of snobbery in there.
Such a show off. So where can we see your program, Queen of the Castle?
It's airing in 10 countries and soon to be in the UK, but I cannot announce that yet.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I'm going to look out for it because I love programmes like that. And thank you very much for joining us on LBC this evening. That's Dr. Anne Kaplan-Mulholland there. So we'll come to your calls in a moment. Has money made you happy or actually made you very, very sad? 0345 6060 973. It's 18 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
At Tier
Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
9:20 on LBC. Right, we will come to your calls in a moment, but first I want to talk to Dr. Phil White, who is a founding member of the campaign group Patriotic Millionaires UK. Or is it Patriotic? I never know, one or the other. A former business consultant and engineer. Phil, very good evening. Now, you being part of Patriotic Millionaires, you must be a millionaire. Has money made you happy?
Oh, hi there. It's certainly taken the stress away. And I think that's a really important thing. And we need to distinguish between stress and happiness. Yes, money can't make you happy, although it does help. But certainly it relieves stress in a big way. And the fact that, I have enough money to overcome most daily things, to buy what I want. If there's a disaster happening, I can generally buy my way out of it. Yeah, absolutely. That really helps. On the other hand, if I was really struggling with hoping the car wouldn't break down because I couldn't afford the repair bills, that's not going to make me very happy.
I know 3 billionaires. I'm not saying that to boast, but I do. And certainly one of them, I think one of the things that makes him most happy is actually giving away his money in a sort of philanthropic way. I don't know whether that's the case with every sort of very, very rich person, but he clearly gets a huge kick out of that. Do you think that is typical of people with a lot of money?
Well, I mean, without pretending to be a psychologist, people are complex, and a lot of happiness comes from satisfaction of doing good things, actually, I think. And so for somebody with wealth, then giving away some of that wealth can be a good thing, and that can create satisfaction. For other people, it might be working in the charity shop on a sort of Monday afternoon or whatever, and again, giving back to the community in some way. So all different ways of people doing that, or helping a friend, and all these things people actually value and give them happiness. And the human race is a very adaptable, sort of ingenious bunch, really, and very resilient, and actually generally tends to make the best of whatever circumstances we've got, I think. So the point you made earlier about actually, some of the people that who really haven't got very much money can be very happy as well. Doesn't mean it's the happiest they'll ever be, but yeah, people make the best of their lot, I think.
Has money, or the lack of it, ever brought you unhappiness?
It's brought me stress. I don't think it's brought me unhappiness, but it's certainly, there have been times, I earned my money, I didn't inherit it. There have been times when, I was struggling to see how I'd get through to the end of the month. And that absolutely is stressful. And so, I ended up working evening jobs, which just actually helps the financial stress, but adds to the rest of the stress instead. So that lack of money definitely does have, I think, an ill effect on happiness, stress, and health, actually.
And also, if you don't inherit money and you earn it yourself, there must be a certain point when you think, okay, well, I've got all this money. What do I do with it? And that can cause a bit of stress as well.
There is. And I mean, you raise the question of what does being wealthy or what does having money mean? And again, to me, it means not having to worry about it, if you like. So, as you say, we can buy what we want. We don't have, unforeseen circumstances causing problems. And then, there is I don't know, difficult to universalize, but, certainly I have a desire to do some good things, to give back. And I do that through speaking out for reducing wealth inequality and economic justice and those things. And I can use my money to do some of that as well. And certainly, and I give to good causes, as do most people with wealth as well. And that is satisfying. But there does come a responsibility with it. It's true.
But there isn't the culture of philanthropy in this country that I think exists in the United States, where it's almost, if you do have a lot of money, it is almost expected of you to be philanthropic. Or do you think Americans just shout about it a bit more than we do?
I think when you look at the numbers, there's a lot of shouting goes on for relatively small percentages of their fortune. Yes, if a billionaire gives away, a couple of million pounds, that's a big deal to who is ever receiving it. It's not making a significant dent in their finances.
Phil, thank you very much indeed. That's Dr. Phil White there, founding member of the campaign group Patriotic Millionaires UK. Right, let's go to your calls. I'm sure you've all got some interesting things to tell us. Let's go to Dan in Falmouth. Hello, Dan.
Hello, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. Now, you have to have a lot of money to live in Falmouth nowadays, don't you?
Oh, you don't. if you're put in a council flat for medical reasons.
Right.
Basically, I had a pretty good start in life. I was sent to a fee-paying school, and things basically sort of started going wrong for me in my early teens when I started having seizures. I was diagnosed with epilepsy, and kind of the original sort of plan for my life went wrong from there. But that's not anything to cry about. I'm incredibly happy. I don't have a huge amount of money, but I work part-time. Like I said, I don't have a lot of money, but my quality of life, despite that, is incredible. I appreciate the life I have, despite not having a lot of money. I look at people who have sort of an incredible amount of wealth, and they look a lot more stressed than I do.
Is it in part down to where you live? In that, whenever I come down to Devon and Cornwall, I just think it's just a totally different way of life to the one that I'm used to. And I always think, I could really love living here. It's just such a lovely environment to live in. And
it could be partly my environment, yeah. But I was born here, and I can't help that.
Well, no, I think you've been very lucky to have been born there, frankly. I think it's one of the most beautiful parts of the world.
It's gorgeous, yeah. But it's not just that. It's community. It's people who are willing to look after you. It's just feeling like you don't need a lot. Like, I go for a walk. I take my dog out. I have enough. I have enough not to feel desperate on a daily basis, but I really appreciate what I have.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think that's just a case. I don't think that's just a Cornwall thing. I think I feel that you can do that in a lot of places.
Well, you mentioned having a dog there. To my mind, dogs give you more satisfaction in life than virtually anything else can.
Yeah, they're fantastic, yeah.
And people who don't own dogs think I'm being really stupid when I say that, but you know exactly what I mean, don't you?
I know exactly what you mean.
Dan, thank you very much. James says, if you spend money buying surprises to make other people happy, their glee and thrill from your unexpected gift brings you deep happiness that lasts forever. The memory of the lovely things you did for someone else gives you everlasting joy. Conversely, buying material things for yourself that you've longed to own are never as exciting as you've been imagining the moment that you got them. Do you know, that is so true. I remember back in about 1995, I bought myself not just a CD player, but it was a CD player that had 6 cartridges in, and each one could take 6 CDs. So you had 36 CDs, and you could put them all on shuffle. I thought I'd really made it by buying that. I can't remember how much it cost, but it was a pioneer thing, and I remember it being quite expensive. And but it didn't quite give me what I thought it was going to give me. It didn't make me feel sort of that it was worth spending that amount of money. Anyway, James says, I always wanted a Mark I VW Scirocco. As soon as I sat in my new Scirocco, I realised I couldn't see myself driving it. Watching that car being driven by someone else is what I'd actually enjoyed. So I got my wife to video me driving past the house so I could better enjoy it. Oh, I think that is absolutely brilliant. I'll tell you what, I had a Mark II Scirocco back in 1986. It was my first sort of proper car in a way. I had Ford Cortinas before that. And I've always wanted to own another vintage Scirocco, but I've never actually managed to find one and they didn't even have power steering in those days. But I mean, if I bought a classic car, it would be that. And I then bought in 1989 an Audi Quattro, like they had on Life on Mars. And again, I thought I'd really made it when I'd done that. And I found that car. I just happened to see it on Facebook once. And it's now a rally car. I had a blue one. They turned it white, and it's still got the same registration that I had. I can even remember D52 VJN. I would love to buy that car back. Anyway, enough about money. Oh, no, the Quattro was in Ashes to Ashes, not Life on Mars. Life on Mars was the Ford Capri, says Chris. I beg to differ on that, but he's nodding his head, and whenever he nods his head, he's always very sure of himself, so we'll have that argument in a moment. It's 9:30 on LBC. More of your calls to come. Does money buy happiness, or can it make you actually thoroughly miserable? 0345 6060 973. Daryl Jackson is here with the latest news headlines at 9:30.
The Prime Minister has apologised to Jeffrey Epstein's victims for falling for Peter Mandelson's lies after appointing him as his ambassador to the US. Sir Keir Starmer says he regrets the decision following allegations Mandelson was passing sensitive information to the late sex offender. A 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a teacher was attacked with a weapon at a school in Pembrokeshire. Milford Haven Comprehensive was put into lockdown. And an inquiry has found the deaths of at least 30 people who died while attempting to cross the English Channel could have been prevented. Their inflatable vessel overturned in November 2021 during one of the deadliest small boat crossings on record. LBC weather, spells of rain continuing to move across the UK tonight. Drier in the northwest, a low of -1.
This is LBC. Dale on LBC.
9:33, and the breaking news on LBC is that Chris was wrong because it wasn't a Ford Capri. It was a Ford Cortina in Life on Mars. So I'm feeling rather smug, even though I said it. Oh, he says it's 1-1 because I said that the Audi Quattro was in both. So, OK, I'll give him that. He's very competitive. Now, Caroline says, happiness is a fleeting emotion. No one is in a permanently happy state. Is that true? I mean, there are people who seem permanently happy, just as there are people who are permanently miserable gits. I'm not sure I agree with that, Caroline. Anyway, she says that would be weird. An overall sense of contentment, though, with meaning, purpose and peace, that's much harder to have if every day is a struggle to make ends meet. I think that is true. If you've just tuned in, because I know people do tune in all the time, hopefully not tune out, we're talking about whether money can buy you happiness, because Elon Musk has sent a tweet Do we still... No, a post, we have to call them now, don't we? Saying he's the richest man in the world, and he wrote on X, whoever said money can't buy happiness really knew what they were talking about, and with a sad emoji. I'm not sure that anybody is going to feel particularly sorry for him, but I suppose that is evidence that even very, very, very rich people get sad from time to time. Has money bought you happiness, Benedict? And I'm not sure whether to say is in Windermere or on Windermere in Cumbria. Benedict, very good evening.
Anymore, it's in Kendal, so that's different.
Okay.
So the last caller, I agree with her about the happiness, by the way. You know, it can be a fleeting glimpse, and sometimes you feel happy, sometimes you don't feel happy. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is you have the money. If you do have enough money to not have to worry about every single day about what everything's, financially is happening to you, then they should stop whinging about it, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Whether you're a billionaire, millionaire, I don't know.
Well, whinging is part of being British, isn't it? Don't you think?
Well, yeah, but there's nothing wrong with having a whinge, but when there's serious stuff going on, you know what I mean?
Well, I think that there are people in this world who will never find anything to be happy about, even if they live what to the outside world is the most perfect life.
Well, there's people that live in Sudan as well, where they've got absolutely nothing as well, isn't there? And that is really harsh.
Yeah.
But if we're in what were you, the fifth, sixth richest country in the world? And you know, if you've got enough money to tide yourself over, you can afford to buy yourself your own house. Fantastic. You know, that would be absolutely brilliant, because that gives you the sense of security. If you can't afford to even live in a rented property, etc., then you know, it's hard. It's hard.
Well, were you a fan of the Fast Show?
Of the what?
The Fast Show. With Paul Whitehouse.
Well,
because we were talking about...
I gritted my teeth. Why, were you on that?
No, I wasn't on it, but there was a character on that, which kind of goes... That last text, the woman who said, well, not everyone's happy all the time, there was a character on that who would sort of be wandering along a beachfront and just be looking into the camera, being permanently happy and just saying, oh, it's super, isn't it? It's fabulous here.
No.
Do you remember that?
I get that. You can't be permanently happy. I understand that. That's a psychological state in your mind, but that's emotional. But money does help. You know, to have a certain amount of money does help. Trust me. It helps with the relationships. It helps with paying your rent, etc., or your mortgage, whatever. I mean, that really does help. So, like I say, the whinges, as far as I'm concerned, then maybe we need to change our British style and sort of say, you know what I mean?
OK, Benedict, thank you very much indeed. So we've had two callers from two of the most beautiful areas of the country. We're going to Wigan next. But let me read out a text first. Steve says, on happiness and wealth, I suspect a lot of really rich people place conditions on their happiness, like I'll be happy when I've got this and I'll be happy when I've got that. Others live in the moment. God hates pride so much, he reverses people's status outside this realm. So get rid of your wealth, advised Jesus. Better yet, spend it on people who can't repay you, and God will repay you outside this realm. It's like storing your wealth in heaven ahead of you, he said. Oh, goodness me, that was rather deep and meaningful, wasn't it? Mark is in Wigan. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Ian. I'm glad to be speaking to you again. It's been a long time. I hope I'm clear. I have just gotten on a train.
Oh, you're perfectly clear. Let's see what you've got to say before you go through a tunnel.
Right, so there was something I heard, a few things I've heard actually keep popping into my mind the more I've been listening to this show. One would be, I heard one philosopher say happiness would be an unattainable goal, but a necessary byproduct to live in, just to live in life. But the thing that was on my mind when I first called was it was a study either done by Jordan Peterson or one that he endorsed, at the very least. which would be that happiness and misery, they take part in different parts of the brain. And it was looking at money's impact on both. And the lack of money, not being able to pay your bills, all the necessities you need to survive, that will make a person miserable. But once a person had enough money, the amount of happiness they get from it would drop off like shortly after getting past the threshold, of being comfortable, if you will.
I mean, I suppose we have to differentiate, don't we, between happiness and contentment, because happiness, I suppose, is a sort of slight extreme version of contentment, isn't it? But if you can only be happy if you're constantly getting a fix from extra money, you're not content, are you?
No, that's like a transient pleasure, isn't it? Something fleeting.
Yeah.
But I would say that the people that are poorer in wealth could be richer in life just because they'd have to live in a different way. Whereas if people have a lot of money, everything could be quite instantaneous, a lot of instant gratification. Whereas if someone needs to live to get the same joys out of life, they're going to be getting a more natural, I don't want to say kick, but the stuff they're getting in the brain, all the chemicals that make up the happiness, that's going to be more, natural.
Let me read you this text from Matthew. See what you make of it. He says, people with money are so full of rubbish. Money can buy happiness through not having to worry about bills or if we should put the heating on. Money buys you the freedom to make yourself happy. Now, that last sentence, I think, is very true, isn't it?
Yeah, I would have to say so. If people feel constrained with, by the economics of society, if they're not able to pay the rent or something like that, then they're not going to be able to see any or plan rather for anything further than just getting by day to day. Aye.
It's almost easier to define what unhappiness means rather than happiness, isn't it? I mean, I can imagine if you are the main breadwinner in a family and you can't earn enough to feed your family, clothe your family, provide them with a roof over their head. I mean, I can't imagine anything worse than that for the person, whether it's a man or the woman, who is the lead breadwinner, because inevitably you're going to think you've let your family down.
Yeah, guilt and shame are going to be coming in at that point. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, really, by saying that happiness is harder to define than contentment, I think you said. I mean, can anyone really define happiness well, other than whittling it down to chemical reactions that go on in a person's head?
It's a dopamine hit, isn't it? It's as you said, use that word transient before. I think that's absolutely right. Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Let's go to Colin, who's a new caller from Dubai. Hello, Colin.
How are you?
I'm very well. Now, I imagine that everyone who lives in Dubai is very, very rich. Are you?
I've been very fortunate in my life, and I've been able to get to a place where I'm comfortable.
What does that mean?
Well, I'm in a position whereby if I don't want to work anymore, I don't have to work anymore. Which is very, very fortunate. But I come from very humble beginnings. I come from a housing estate in Glasgow, and my parents were very. I come from a working class background. I still consider myself working class. I like to work, but I don't think money makes you happy per se. No, but my sister says money doesn't make you happy, and I say yes, but it gives me the giggles. So,
what do you mean by that?
Well, a couple of years ago, I went to the doctors and I was told that I've got throat cancer. Now, if I didn't have a certain amount of money, I wouldn't be alive today because I was able to go and get private health care. So, there is that. So I'm fortunate. However, I don't consider myself lucky because I didn't fall into this position. I worked hard and I was diligent and I was frugal. But the question was, does money? What did Musk? What did he post? What was the post? again.
Hang on, let me just find it. I was just tidying my papers and I put it away.
I'm sorry,
No,
I put you on the spot.
It'll be here somewhere. It was basically something along the lines of, oh no, here we are. He said, whoever said that money can't buy you happiness really knew what they were talking about.
My philosophy is, anyone who says that money can't make you happy never gave enough of it away.
Oh, that's interesting. That's quite profound.
But it's true. You can do a lot of good with money. I mean, if you take, I have a son that's 25, and about 4 or 5 years ago, he really was quite infatuated with someone called Conor McGregor. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but
is he the boxer?
Yeah, the UFC fighter who was a bit of a swagger. And he said, "Dad, do you not like him? I thought you would have liked him because you're positive and you like people that come from humble beginnings and work their way up." And I thought, well, look at what he could have done with his wealth and status. He could have been a beacon of hope. But instead, he's more into the material. And I think we place too much happiness in the material instead of what's going on the inside.
I think that is absolutely true. I think we have become an increasingly materialistic society, and if we want something, we want it now. We don't want to necessarily wait until we can afford it. We'll buy it on credit because we want to have that instant dopamine hit.
Absolutely. People don't practice delayed gratification now. But, it's funny because it's so paradoxical. Because if you want to create wealth, but what you have to do is be frugal for a long time, and you don't actually look as if you've got anything.
Yeah.
But people that go and buy cars on finance and have a big payment and a house payment, and they may look as if they've created some material success. But usually that's not the case. To get to a stage where you're financially, independent, really takes the opposite. Paradoxically, it means that you don't have these things for a very, very long time. For a very, very long time, I had a very mediocre vehicle before I had vehicles.
And dare I ask what you drive in Dubai?
I've got a driver, actually.
Now that is the ultimate definition of having money, isn't it?
Well, but again, what's the difference between happiness and joy? Happiness, we mistake pleasure for peace. We chase pleasure nowadays. We don't chase peace. We don't chase joy. We chase happiness. And happiness and pleasure come from the outside, and joy and peace come from the inside.
By the way, Colin, if your driver is planning to come to the UK, I might need one from Monday because I think I'm going to get banned from driving.
No.
Yeah.
Have you been naughty?
I have, shall we say, on the odd occasion, driven a little bit too fast.
Well, there's none of us perfect.
No, well, this is that's what I console myself with. But it will make me very unhappy not to be able to drive for however long they decide that I shouldn't be driving for.
But I can't wait to see the good that comes out of that, because I'm sure
no good can come of it. No good can come out of that, Colin.
You get your steps in.
Yeah. Because you see, my partner, I'm not sure quite realises this yet, is going to have to take me to the station every day and pick me up at 11:30 at night. Which is not going... What, 8 miles?
Yes.
In this weather? With my knees?
Maybe not in the rain, but maybe put a podcast on or something and walk and delight in nature.
I'm not walking up the A21, I can tell you that for nothing.
There's always that. There's always that.
Oh, okay. You see, getting a driver, you see, you've put an idea in my head now, but I'm not rich enough to do that.
Well, it's cost-benefit analysis, because the time that I would spend driving, I could actually work in the back of my car, so it does make sense.
Oh, no, I can't work in a car. It makes me feel car sick.
Oh, you
you.
Anyway,
Bye.
Colin, listen, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for phoning in. V in Wokingham says, the word spendthrift means someone who spends money excessively or wastefully. Oh, does it? Oh, I thought that meant that you're actually thrifty. Sorry, I obviously got that wrong earlier. Not somebody who worries about spending money. Sorry to be a pedant. No, you're absolutely right. You've put me right. Thank you very much indeed, V. It's 9:49.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
As the King and Queen are heckled over Andrew, how much damage is this scandal doing to the monarchy? Plus, why Russia might soon be sending cyborg pigeons into battle in Ukraine.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
It is 9:52 on LBC. Let's go to Frank, who's in St Albans. Hi, Frank.
Ian, great show, mate.
Thank you very much.
Colin, he said the right thing. Share your wealth. How much money do people really want? Billions, trillions, and everything else. We can do so much money. We can wipe out world debts. We can take this world to protect it with the environment, the ecosystems in the waters, to protect islands in the Pacific, Indian Oceans, where there's tribes that actually live off these islands. They've got nothing, and due to climate change, we can change everything. What it is, it's greed. It's absolutely greed. When Elon Musk has come out and said, money doesn't make you happy, well, share your wealth, Musk.
Well, I'm
share
sure.
your wealth.
I'm sure he does.
Help hospitals. Go to areas where they're, even in America or anything else, put your billions of pounds that you make every month, put their money into there, put your name on the map on this earth and share your wealth, because you can't take it with you, my friend.
But didn't he do that when he was providing all those Starlink systems in Iran to get round when the mullahs sort of shut off the internet? I think he donated those. I may be wrong.
Yeah, but I'm just talking. Yeah, but how much is he worth? How much is Bill Gates worth? How many rich nations are out there, my friend?
Well, Bill Gates, I mean, he donates huge amounts of money.
I know. But I know. But is it enough? Is it enough?
Well,
because when people are making trillions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars a year, every year. But this planet, we look at everything that's at this present moment. When we look at the news, you guys, what you say, climate changing and this and the other. Why can't we protect this beautiful planet that we live in? Because at the end of the day, nature now is starting to bite back. Climate change, unfortunately, we are destroying this world because of banks, wealth, everything. It's all about wealth. And until these governments all over the world start deciding enough is enough, let's just try and protect this beautiful planet. Look at the sky, blue sky and the sun's out. The seas are perfect. Everything's perfect. Because at the end of the day, there's people out there, they've got so much money, they can wipe out world debt. They've got so much money, they can wipe out famine. They've got so much money to provide all the infrastructure to sort out poverty, health, and everything. Why can't we live like that?
All right, Frank, I'm going to let you go there because I've only got 4 minutes left and I want to get a couple more calls on. Thank you very much. Matt says, money is a curse because with great wealth comes a great spiritual responsibility. The value of a single Ferrari could lift 5,000 children out of distress, despair and hopelessness. Let's go to Derek, who is in Cullen in the north of Scotland. Hello, Derek.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
I'm going to have to listen to it on catch up because this sounds like it's been a great programme. So thank you.
Well, I think it's been a rather good one, frankly, even though I say so myself.
I really like your cross-question segment.
Yeah, well, that's why we go on 4 days a week now because people were liking it.
Yeah, I think you should be on 5 days a week, at least.
Well, we could put it to Rachel Johnson, I guess.
There you go. Anyway, as long as you don't take over any of Nick Abbott's time, I'll be happy.
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't dare, because when I stood in for him when his technology failed during COVID, shall we say his listeners were none too impressed that they were having to listen to me rather than Nick Abbott. So I learnt my lesson on that one. Anyway, Derek, happiness.
Happiness. Do we, as the British population, realise how lucky we are?
No.
I mean, people think that you have to have a lot of luck to be rich. That might be true, but do people realise how lucky they are to be in this country and to have welfare to look after them if their luck runs out? Which brings me to this quote that I'm not sure where it came from, but poor and content is rich and rich enough.
Well, that's quite profound. I thought you were going to say to be born an Englishman is to win the first prize in the lottery of life, which I think is a Churchill quote. I'm sure he meant Scottish, Welsh and Irish too.
Yeah, I was going to say, but I'm Scottish. I'm sure that was from The King's Speech, the movie The King's Speech.
I don't know. Could well
George V.
Yeah.
But
it was Cecil. It was Cecil Rhodes, says Chris, and Chris is always right.
Ah, well, he sounds like a wise man. Oh, Cecil Rhodes, not Chris. I'm sure Chris is wise as well.
Chris is very wise, but yeah, Cecil Rhodes. He had shall we say, his detractors?
Yeah. So whenever you think, oh, how could this happen to me? How could my life be so? Just think to yourself. You've got a roof over your head. You've got food in the fridge. What else do you need? Poor and content is rich and rich enough.
Thank you very much indeed, Derek. Final word to Kat, who says, Ian, my mum has said to me that money might not be able to buy you happiness, but it can buy you comfort. I think this is a valid point. Think flying first class instead of economy, driving in a comfortable luxury car instead of a crowded bus. Well, you're absolutely right. Thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening and throughout this week. I'm back on Monday from 7. If you missed any of this evening's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download both now for free from your app store. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it is Clive Ball, but right now the very picture of contentedness, it's Ben Kentish.
Thank you, Ian. That's a nice thing to say. Hello there. A very, very good evening to you. It's very content to be with you tonight, Ben Kentish here on LBC. On the show...
How long have you known about Andrew and Epstein? Have you asked the police to cover up for Andrew?
row over Peter Mandelson this week perhaps has come to the relief of one man, at least. The man formerly known in this country as Prince Andrew, because the latest revelations about his links to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein have been overshadowed by the conversation about the future of this country's Prime Minister. Today, though, the King and Queen were heckled over the Andrew scandal during a visit to Essex. So tell me this hour, what do you make of how the royal family have handled this controversy? Has it changed your view of them in any way? And could this be the beginning of the end of the monarchy?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 10 o'clock, Sir Keir Starmer's fighting for his political future this evening, apologising for falling for Peter Mandelson's lies over Jeffrey Epstein. The Prime Minister says he regrets appointing him as his ambassador to the US and denies knowing the depths of the two men's relationship. Former Tory Cabinet Minister Lord Michael Gove told LBC he does have some sympathy for Sir Keir, but says the public won't.
People will think, well, you're the Prime Minister, you should have had access to this information. You should have known that he was unreliable. There were career diplomats whom you could have appointed. At the very least, you were too clever by half and favoured Labour's interests or your own clique's interests over the national interest. At worst, your judgment has once again proved to be deficient.
Peter Mandelson's previously denied any wrongdoing. A 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a teacher was attacked. Officers were called to Milford Haven Primary School in Pembrokeshire. Police say the teacher's injury was not a stab wound. Police have named a university student who died after being stabbed near to a campus. Khalid Oladipo, who was from London, died in hospital after being attacked near De Montfort University in Leicester. LBC's Midlands reporter George Ike has more.
The family of Mr. Oladipo have released a tribute. They said they cannot begin to put into words how sad they are to have lost him. They described him as an extremely loved son, brother, uncle, boyfriend and friend. They said how one of his main passions was football and he'd played since the age of 4. They said he was also an Arsenal supporter and believed he was on his way